Welcome to the Political Matrix News. Politics, people, local, regional, national news. Political Matrix News keeps you informed. We have the sources, we have the truth from inside the Political Matrix.
Well, we are back. This is Greg Fink here again with the Political Matrix News, and we got Scott Miller here. And we are now talking about the ex-Fauci, I guess, a consultant with the what is it, Infectious Disease? Which one?
Well, I mean, he depending on when it was, he was with various agencies associated with the National Institute of Health, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID.
Right. And it looks like they're actually discussing in emails on how to delete records.
Well, they found these after numerous FOIA requests, they tried to get lots of information about COVID, and these emails really began at the beginning of COVID, during the time when everyone was demanding that the government give us all of this,
right?
All kinds of information about the origin of the virus, the origin of the vaccine, and side effects and other alternative treatments and things like that. And they just stonewalled the world and said, no, it's like this, and this is the only version of the story that we're going to talk about. And the media supported them in it. The whole time all that is happening, people are sending out Freedom of Information Act requests,
right?
And wondering why they're not getting things. Well, I won't tell you. If you've ever been involved in getting information from the government, this guy right here is exactly, he's not the guy, he is typical of the senior people at most of these agencies who get this way because they don't want to, they don't want to be accountable. So they come up with these strategies to skirt the law. And this guy's a perfect example, although what he did was blatantly illegal.
Right. This is back in, I guess, June of 2020 on the 16th. And I guess they're saying here is that we are all smart enough to know to never have smoking guns, and if we do, we would put them in emails, and if we were found, I guess they were going to delete them. Huh. Wow. That's our government at work, guys. That's our government here who's trying to save us from, everybody dying from COVID. They were not the one to tell the truth on. It's speechless. I mean, come on, get real.
I actually think his second line, the line following that, is even more telling, because he's saying in his 22 years at NIAID, I've never seen a FOIA that turned up useful information. Right, it's like he's bragging. He's that they're so accomplished at stonewalling people that that he has what he considered an unblemished record. But it's a special kind of stupid. Like I think you said that earlier.
They're joking, So I mean, they're saying there's some sarcasm here, I guess, or
no. He says that he says that to try to make it seem like, oh no, that was just a joke. I didn't really mean that. But you keep reading them, and they're the same thing over and over in more and more detail. So either he is just the worst deadpan joke teller, or he's flat lying to people and coordinating a way to commit felonies.
And we wonder why all of us were asking questions so much about Fauci and the COVID and the medicine and the masking and we shut down the entire government. We shut down the entire country for this. And we're asking why we needed to, and we just wanted fucking answers. That's all we wanted was answers.
The thing is, and while in my mind, this is this is really distressing that it happened about COVID. The fact of the matter is that our government, there's a reason that we have these Freedom of Information Act rules, so that we can keep our government accountable. And even when if you think the government is completely looking out for you and they're completely above board, even if you want to entertain that fantasy, the fact of the matter is that people can get so blinded and so tunnel visioned on something that if someone doesn't tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, that's not what you think it is. I read this report I read this email that you wrote, and you're completely off base. And let me tell you why. That only happens if you can only get these intransigent people off of a talking point if we can examine the documents that they're creating with our money and in our name.
Right. Yeah, I've been involved in numerous FOIA requests and federal records requests, and I'm still actually waiting for 3 or 4 of them for 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, and the reality is that without the data, without them sharing the information with the public, if they're hiding stuff, why are they hiding it? And it's usually not ineptitude. It's usually because of there's dollar figures missing somewhere, or there's data missing somewhere that affects dollar figures. And usually all it goes back to corruption and kickbacks. And that's usually, or somebody just really screwed up on the job. And here we're talking about COVID. And this is a very, very serious condition, especially back then in June of 2020. It was at the height. We were having people unemployed everywhere. The government was having to cover people's rents. And rent wasn't, nobody could pay for rent. They actually had a whole 6-month period where they didn't have to pay rent in some areas. People were getting lots of money for unemployment that didn't have unemployment issues. Lots of people that really were unemployed couldn't get unemployment. And so you had a lot of fraud in that area there. You had a lot of fraud in the PPP area. And all this here fraud and everything else going on throughout the entire time. And whenever people just ask questions like, where are we at with the medicine? Where are we at with the killing? Where are we at with the dying? Where are we at with, all the stuff that China gave to us here through COVID and through the pandemic. We're basically victims here of chemical warfare and germ warfare, and nobody really wanted to answer any damn questions.
Mm-hmm. And shame you for even asking.
Exactly. The whole masking idea is, what kind of mask? Is it this kind of mask? That kind of mask? And still to this day, people will still use the blue masks and everything else, but the real structured ones, they're not out there anymore. Nobody's really pushing those at all. And COVID's still around. And so it's not killing as many as it did, but you should be able to have answers. You should be able to ask answers.
So years after that whole social distancing thing came out, Fauci himself is actually saying, yeah, we don't know where that talking point came from. And so it wasn't actually based on any research or anything.
No, it wasn't.
It was just a talking point that sounded good, and that's what they wanted to do.
And Fauci,
so they needed something to put in there so they'd have what they could consider a credible group of recommendations. And the fact that they tried to make people look like they were in an operating room, the theater of that just sells.
Right. And the theater that Fauci is very used to this as well. He had been handling infectious diseases all the way since AIDS. And so, he's been involved in the government. And on top of that, with his wife, I guess, getting a part of the company, the vaccines.
Yeah.
And they're shorting or making money off the stocks of that, or their ownership of that, or some sort of way where they're calculating or increasing their profitability on the vaccines. There should be nothing off the table at all for whenever you want to ask them a question. For how much they abuse the system and allowed people to die because they were asleep at the wheel in numerous different areas, we should be able to ask them any freaking question we want without any fallback. And the whole idea they're making jokes and they're basically deleting emails and talking into emails on how they're going to delete them. And how it's just, it goes back to the last segment where we're talking about, ballot harvesting. It's another speechless act from government agencies and government workers that, I just have no idea how these guys are making a paycheck and the rest of the country isn't.
I know, right?
We got a lot of hard work.
One of their emails talks about, hey, I saw these telling emails, so I deleted them because our FOIA lady told me it was a good idea. But then she told me that they never actually go away. So I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea. So he's literally saying this after he's found out that the incriminating evidence that he had is not unfindable. And now he's doubling down on it because it's even more criminal.
I don't know how it is in other states. I know here in Florida where we live, the FOIA stuff actually goes to their personal emails as well and their personal cell phones. And so if you actually request emails from the government servers, because so many people are using their personal cell phone for government work and personal work now because of resources are limited. And so basically, whenever you request the data, you can get it from their personal phone as well as their government phones and their government email and their personal email. And so that's the way it should work. I think we're in the Sunshine State, granted, where we have a lot of sunshine laws like that. And I think the infectious disease area should be just as transparent as the state of Florida.
Well, things are different depending on your jurisdiction. If the federal government has different rules, each state has different rules about how these things are affected, but they all have provisions that allow you to request this information.
Exactly.
And some will let you get into personal email, into personal accounts. Some of them won't. But in Florida, you certainly can, and you should check with your local jurisdiction to see if you're able to. But don't ever be afraid. Florida in particular is very easy to tie someone up. The interesting thing to me is to keep an eye on this guy. What was his name again? I forget what his name was. David Morins.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just watch and see. This guy admitted under oath in open session, to doing all of this stuff and just apologized, and he was embarrassed and whatnot. If I rob a bank and someone calls me out on it, does that mean that he didn't mean to rob that bank? He gave back the money.
You can't really draw the conclusion that this is the same as robbing a bank, could you?
I can draw the conclusion that you can spend as much time in jail for it.
That's true. Because it really all depends on what the data they're trying to get. Some of them might be life and death data. Some of them might be. Unfortunately, we don't know because the FOIA request was deleted. And so we have really no freaking idea what they're requesting. We have no idea if they're talking about nursing homes or nursing home care, or if they're talking about spreading it or the incubation process or anything. We don't know anything they're asking because we're not privy to that information because they got rid of it. And the whole idea is that when you email a public official, it should be public. That's it. No question asked. It should be on record for a standard of 8 to 10 years. That's the way that most records are kept in the government agencies. And so, if you don't have server space, get more. Amazon's handling all the server space for them. I'm sure Amazon would love to give them more server space.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to go ahead and tie it up here for this segment here of the Political Matrix News. And I hope everybody has a very safe Memorial Day weekend. Be careful out there. Don't drink and drive. And don't do anything that's dangerous or hurting anybody. Just be careful and have fun. Bye-bye. It's going to be a fun summer.